Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Three Geeks conversation. I am joined by Brian from season 5 of The Circle. Was it season 5, season 4 of The Circle? And I can't wait to talk to him. You came on the show as Brittany, and I want to know, like, what is the process like to get on the show?
Oh man, so there's two different processes to get on the show. One, they recruit people who are already known, influencers, comedians, etc. They recruit them, and then people like me, who had approximately about 150, 200 followers on Instagram, essentially a nobody, if you want to call it that. So basically, one day I decided to apply for the show. We had big fans of the show for the first couple of seasons, and we were watching it. And then my fiance said, "Hey, you should try to go on." And I was like, "You know what? I should try," but with no, in a million years, never thought I would actually be cast. So I sent in an application video. I just did a little thing saying, "Hey, my name is Brian. I'd love to be on The Circle." Put out a little application as well to go along with it. And then 2 months later, they called me back and said, "Hey, would you like to be on The Circle?" And I said, "Yeah." And then, so it wasn't as simple as that. I had to go through multiple interviews with multiple casting directors. And then after that, I had to go to the Netflix people. And if they liked me, I had to, go through a process with them. And so finally at the end, they said, "Yeah, we're sending you to the UK." And then I went to the UK, and the rest is history. So it took several months to go through the entire process.
How long are you there filming? Is it a week?
So no, it's a long time. So we were in the UK for approximately 5 weeks. 5 weeks in the UK. And so the first couple of weeks, because you got to remember, we filmed during COVID time. So it was 2021 when we filmed the show. So it was a long time ago. And so it was during that time when in the UK, they had COVID restrictions. So we had to go there. I had to take a bunch of COVID tests before I went there. And then as soon as I landed, I had to take COVID tests essentially a few times a week. So they wanted to make sure we were quarantined and clear. And then I'd say after being there for about maybe 3 weeks, that's when they call you and say, "Hey, you're going on the show," because you're not guaranteed to go on the show when you're over there. So you fly over there and they say, "All right, you still have to go through the process," because when you see the intro where they introduce everyone, during that time, I had no idea I was actually going to be on the show. That was about a week and a half before I actually went into the studio. And so when you're doing that, you still don't know if you're going to be on the show because all the application stuff is done by Zoom, kind of like this. And so you may be a great Zoom person, but in real life, when you're in front of all the executives, the producers, and everyone, and lights, camera, action, you could freeze up like a deer in headlights. So they wanted to make sure that you were, okay with handling that pressure. And so, and then you're just in quarantine essentially for several weeks, and it's a process. But then you're like, the day before I went in the house, they said, "Hey, you're going in," and so that's how I got in. So you're there for about 5 weeks total. For the entirety of the production.
Wow, that seems intense because you got to quarantine for COVID, and then you're essentially isolating yourself again while you're on the show, except through like chats and so forth.
Yeah, it's a lot. You have to be strong enough to handle the pressure of being alone, the pressure of not knowing what's happening. And it's important to go through it like, all right, my whole process during the whole thing was, hey, if I get on, great. If I don't, it's a fun story to talk about. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it was a lot, to go through the process, but it's not one of those things where it was one of my lifelong dreams to be on the show. I wasn't an influencer. I wasn't applying for a bunch of reality TV shows. This was just a whim to see if I could actually go on. And so the fact that I actually even got to go that far, even if I got sent home from the UK before I even got on the show, I would have been fine with it because it would have been just an amazing thing to get that far because there are so many people that apply for the show.
So on the show you mentioned that you wouldn't do everything the way you did it again if you had to repeat it. Now that you've watched the show back, or like a lot of the outcomes and so forth, does that opinion still stick? Would you still do everything the way you did?
No. So I would have kept my positive mindset. I would have stayed positive, but I would have opened up a lot more. See, I'm a big reality TV fan. Like the more strategic shows, like Survivor, Big Brother, shows like that. And so I'm used to people, kind of playing it close to the vest at first, and then as you go on, you get a little bit more information out. You form your tribe, and then you share your information with them and them only, and then you kind of work your way and navigate through. So I definitely would have connected a lot more, a lot sooner on the circle, because it's so unique, because where you're talking to people, you don't even know if you're actually talking to that person. And secondly, you don't know their reaction to what they're telling you, because if you watch the show, you saw that, when I was talking to people, they didn't tell me that I wasn't giving them enough. They didn't tell me that I wasn't, sharing enough information. It was all rainbows and sunshine, like, oh, I love you, you're great. But behind the scenes, when they were in their apartments, they were like, oh, you're doing terrible. This is awful. This is horrible. And so in a reality TV show where you're with everybody in the same room, where you can see and kind of see how they're reacting to you, with their facial feedback, the way they're talking to you, that would have been a lot easier for me. But with being on the circle, and you're being, in a house, an apartment by yourself, you don't get that feedback. So I definitely would have came out a little stronger, a lot sooner, and just given more information, because that is apparently what they wanted. So I would have done some things differently as far as just connecting quicker and just giving more information. But my strategy was to go in, to be quiet, silent, not a threat, and just wait for someone to make that mistake. And that obviously didn't work. So I would have changed that part of it.
Yeah, I thought you did great. It can't be easy going in as your daughter and then having to flirt with boys. Like, I have a daughter too, and I was watching you, and I'm like, I can relate to this. This has to be rough, because you're pretty much selling them on your daughter, and it's like weird. It's weird in a way, but it's not weird. Yeah, I get it, man. I would probably do the same thing you did. I'd probably go in as my daughter, because going in as an older dad, you don't think that that's going to resonate as well as somebody that's younger.
Yeah, and whenever during the beginning of the casting process, right? You get freedom to kind of choose when you're talking to the casting people and the producers. They ask you ahead of time, like, okay, what is your game plan going in? Because one thing, if you ever apply for a reality TV show, it's crucial to have a game plan. Like, what's your game plan going in? What you plan on doing? And so I gave them 3 different options. I was either going to go in as myself, which honestly, that was my preference, to go in as myself. I wanted to be myself. I wanted to be me, because it's a lot easier to be myself. And then I told them I could be my fiance Amber or my daughter Brittany. And once they heard my daughter Brittany, they ran with that. They were like, yes, do it. That is how you're going to get on the show, because it's not only you're competing on the show, you're competing to get on the show. You know what I'm saying? So the hardest part of it was competing with the other contestants to get on this show, because they cast a wide net. There's a lot of people that want to go on the show. And so, I preferred to have myself, to go in as myself, because that would have been a lot easier. But they really wanted that Brittany aspect. And, I talked to her about it, and she was so excited. She loves the show as well. Riley was so excited, my granddaughter. They were like, yeah, it's going to be so fun and cool to pretend like, I was them. And they were completely on board with it. They loved the thought of it. And so I made sure, and the whole like, oh, I'm going to flirt with someone, that was just kind of like me kind of selling to get on the show.
Yeah.
But was I really going to flirt with anyone as my daughter? No. And as you saw on there, I didn't flirt with one person. That wasn't going to be my strategy going in. I was just going to play quiet, silent, get some information, and then strike at the right moment. I just didn't have the opportunity to do so. And by the time that I wanted to execute my game plan to where I thought, okay, now it's time to make a move, it was just too late.
Yeah, this season was weird. Like the last few seasons, it's been all about strategy. Like the first season seemed more like it was about connections, and this season seemed like it was a little bit of both. Like Chaz, Sam, oh man, I'm blanking on her name.
Raven, Chaz, Sam,
Raven. Yes, they legitimately were connected, and they were the top three. There's a reason they were the top three, because they were playing as themselves, trying to build those connections and so forth. I was a big fan of Jennifer. They definitely played with strategy, yeah. But they got voted off first, so I don't blame them for coming back with a strategy.
And I think they came back with a vengeance. I think they came back. They were like, you know what? I don't care. You know, they got rid of me. Now they're going for blood, because they went with that mindset. Like, all right, try to make that connection, and playing with your heart a little bit. Although they didn't have much time. It was literally just like that, and they were gone. So I understand them wanting to play a little bit more of a cutthroat game, because they had already been blocked. So they had nothing to lose at that point. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's the best of both worlds. Coming in as an older person, which everyone said that I would have been great at, and I would have been, but coming in as an older person like Jen did, and then having both the male and female perspective to have that, both sides of it, and to combine it with one person. And, you know, Brett, he's from Big Brother. And so he already had that advantage of being on a reality TV show. And Xanthi is just awesome. She's so smart. She's so intelligent. She's so quick. And so the combination of those two, I think if maybe they would have came in as Jen at first and made that initial connection, they may, and if they would maybe have kept Tom, that maybe they would have went further in the game. And well, I know they went to the end, but maybe they could have got a little higher as far as the last round of voting at the finale.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, it was a great season. Shubham got totally screwed. Like he stood no chance coming into the game. Oh man, I was so excited for him to be on there. I'm like, but my daughter was watching it with me. It's her first time seeing the circle, and I'm like, dude, Shubham. She's like, who? And then she watched it. She's like, he's not very good. I'm like, well, he didn't get a chance.
And the funny thing is that I didn't know, you know, because the circle is the way it is, you know, I didn't know Shubham was actually in the game until the finale when he came out. That completely blew my mind. And so I kind of knew, and if you see at the finale, I kind of, you know, knew Bruno was a catfish. And then when Billie Jean came out, I was like, oh my gosh, you know. And then, but when Shubham came out, I was like, I had no concept. I was like, what in the world? It was like just like Xanthi said, it was like kind of like meeting Drake. And I was like, what in the world? It's like a superstar. You're like awestruck. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I wish there was a world where I could have played with Shubham when they tried to overthrow everyone, where they tried to have the revolution, because I would have gone with them, because I knew that based upon the way the show was going, is that the top three, the big three, they were dominating the game. And it was clear that, you know, you either had to be with them and then maybe chop them off the end, or you had to get rid of them right then and there. And I think that he had the right strategy that, you know what, we're not going to win unless we overthrow them. It's just that he was dealt a very difficult hand to be thrown in there. And you could see, you know, and it made me feel a little bit better about my fate on the game when I saw how much he struggled playing a woman, you know, and trying to just navigate that. It's very difficult for a woman to play a man to play a woman on these types of shows. It's very difficult because you're like, okay, I have to pretend to be someone of the opposite sex. How do I do that? And you can't just go in as yourself, because you saw that first season. He was a superstar. Everyone loved him. He killed it. He slayed, him and Joey. But then when he came in as someone else, he was like, you know, it was so hard for him to navigate that. And that just shows how difficult it is. And also, you saw how much different the gameplay was from season 1 to season 5. I was like, this ain't your season 1 circle. This is a season 5 circle. And you had to make that connection quick, and you had to really work with it. And then you just had to, you know, hope for the best. And that's kind of what Chaz and Raven and Sam did. They just dominated Not really from the beginning, because Sam was at the bottom. In that first vote, Sam was struggling. She was number 8 at that first vote. She didn't have that big connection other than with Chaz. And so you saw she was at the bottom. And so she kind of worked her way up. And once she got that connection with Chaz and kind of figured it out, you saw how much she rose up. But, I just wasn't ready to make that big, I'm going to lay it all out there and tell you my game plan yet. Like, why would I tell you my game plan? I don't know you. It's day 1 or 2. Why would I do that? But I guess that's what you had to do in this version of the circle. So
yeah, it changes every year, it seems. So I've interviewed Lee Swift and I interviewed Sammy from season 1, and they always said that, after the season's done, the rest of the old cast members, they like welcome them in and so on and so forth. Has that been your experience too, leaving the show? Like seasons 1 through 4, they're like embraced. It's like a big circle family.
Oh yeah, the Circle family is a really tight knit, close group of people. They all embrace you. We had a wrap party the middle of January, and everyone flew to LA, and all of the old cast members, they all either came out or they made sure that they had some type of way to reach out. For the most part, most of them did. So they all just said, "Oh my gosh, I love you. You're great. You're awesome." On social media, like just people that I found that were just like superstars, like Chris Sapphire, Courtney Revolution, of course, Shubham, the people from season, 4 and 3 and 2 and 1, and just all of them were just amazing. And they're so nice to each other. And just like our cast is super tight. We're super close. We have a WhatsApp chat, that still goes on strong. And, we do our best to try to keep that connection, because, you don't really have that big connection while you're in the Circle house, because you don't really know who they are. You try to make that big connection, but it's not like, those other shows where you're with them and you get to talk to them and give them high fives. You don't really know them. So it was important after the show to maintain that connection and have that group chat. And it just formed into this big, like, lifelong family bond, not only with our season, but the other seasons, because they're really good at keeping that connection. And I think that's unique with our franchise, because you don't always see that with all the other franchises. So the Circle is special.
Circle is so isolating. You guys all share that experience of being isolated for so long, especially during COVID, that I'm sure it bonds you. And because you have a unique experience that only 45 to 60 other people share with you.
Yeah. And it's so, going through a show, if you've never done it before, you've never gone through that process, going through a show, like from before the casting, during the filming, after, and then when it finally releases, it's like a whirlwind of emotions. And, people talk about you online, good or bad. You see yourself where you have no chance to edit yourself. You have no say on the edit. They edit you how they want to edit you, good or bad. And you don't get a chance to filter things or cut things out like you do on social media or your own page. And so just the anticipation of that was so difficult. And, I didn't always handle it great. I'm an older guy, and I've seen a lot, and I'm not an influencer, but it affected me. It was difficult. I can't imagine like how these people on these shows do it over and over and over again. Maybe it's easier after you do it first, or maybe you just don't care. But man, it's definitely a roller coaster of emotions going through the process.
Yeah, I can't imagine, because like you said, you didn't really have a social media presence, and now your social media shot up. I imagine. Did your daughter shoot up too, just based on name recognition?
So it's hilarious because I'm the only person on social media. Like, my daughter doesn't post anything on social media. She doesn't have an Instagram. She doesn't have a Twitter. She has a TikTok, but she just sends me funny TikToks, so she never posts on there. So it's funny because my followers did shoot up afterwards, not astronomically, and I think that's good, because I don't know if I can handle like 50, 100, 200,000 followers. I think some of these have 1 million followers. Like, I'm kind of glad I wasn't the star of the show, because I don't know how I would have handled that. It was hard enough for me to deal with just the first batch of release, I was kind of relieved that I wasn't really in the second batch and the third batch. I mean, I was a little bit the first part of episode 5, but like after that, I was like, okay, I can relax. No more episodes are coming out that feature me except for the finale. And I wasn't the main character. So, and just talking with everyone, it's a net positive being on a show like this. There's ups and downs, but for the most part, it's a great experience. But just that trauma bonding with everyone, because you're not used to getting all these things like, people talking about you on Twitter, sending you DMs, crazy stuff. It's like, and it's easy to say from the outside looking in, oh, why don't you just block them out? Why don't you just delete them? But, you want to make those connections after a show like this. You want to meet people like you. If I didn't check my DMs, I wouldn't be on this show right now. You want to make those connections and build those relationships and network. And to do that, you have to read your DMs. You have to, read the responses that you get on there because you can miss out on opportunities. And so, it's easier said than done to kind of tune that out. But it's been a really great learning experience. And I think it's made me a stronger person afterwards because I'm able to handle, that situation a lot better if more things were to come in the future.
Yeah. And, we've talked a little bit on Instagram chat, and I got to say, I'm surprised like that the circle, like you didn't do better because you're a great communicator through Instagram. So I hope they give you a second chance like Shubham to come back and kill it because I think you will.
Now that I've been on it and I realize, what the game is, because, I only got to see the first and second seasons, By the time the third season came out, that's when I went into the house. So I had no opportunity to see the third season. So I based my strategy on, I'm going to have just like a quiet, non-threatening, non-game playing person, just a person who, you don't see as a threat, and typically that does well because you want to get out your threats and your competitors. And so I thought that if I played that would go well, and it didn't. But for me, I would love to go on the circle again. Great, wonderful. I don't think I'm going to be on any all-stars because I didn't do so well. And you got to make it far. And there's a lot of heavy hitters on this show. I don't think I'd ever be back as an all-star, maybe as a throw-in goofy guy to come in later on just for fun. But I think I would do better in situations where I'm face-to-face with you. Mm-hmm. So I can see you because my job as an investigator, I can see your face. I can read your body language. I can see how you're reacting to me. I can see how you react to other people reacting to me. And so I read all that stuff. So that would be easy. I would clean up on a show like that if I was face to face. Put me on Survivor, Big Brother, and or any of those shows like the Trade. Lights out. It's over. I'm winning it. I'm taking home the trophy, no doubt. But it's a lot harder with the circle. And it's not one of those things where you get to talk to people all day long. It's not like one of those things where you can have endless chats, endless conversations. You can't pick to have like group chats with everyone that you want anytime you want to. That's not how it goes. And so it was very difficult for me, A, to, navigate that, and B, to kind of do that in a way that I would be successful because I was too in my head ahead of time trying to be a 27-year-old girl, which was not good.
My last question is, what did you do during the downtime? Is it a lot of reading that goes on?
So funny thing is, there is not that much downtime. You think there's a lot of downtime. There is not that much downtime. What I did in my downtime was cool down. So I don't know if you noticed, I was hot in that thing. You could see me sweating in the circle. And so there was a heat wave in Manchester when we were filming. And so the apartment was so hot the first 3 days that all I did in between was get ice packs and stuff them down my shirt and put bags of peas on my head and just try to cool down and rest because the filming is so long during the day. So you really don't have that much downtime. There's a lot of filming that goes on because there's a lot of stuff that you don't see that they don't put in the final show. So they have a lot of content. So you don't have that much downtime. But for the most part, my downtime was just trying to cool down and relax and try to just relax from all the tension from being on the circle.
Yeah, I talked to Lee about that when he was on. He's like, there's a lot of conversations that they don't show. Because I asked him about it. I said, it seems like, people get allied really quickly. And he's like, yeah, but you don't always see everything that led to that particular moment. They're just showing the highlights. And yeah, I bet it's a lot. Did you lose track of time in that apartment building?
You don't know what time it is. There are no clocks in there. And so I remember when I was blocked, I was talking to production and they said, do you know what time it is? I said, I have no idea. They were like, it's 3 a.m. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like a Vegas casino. It's like you have no way out. You can't get out. And you're stuck there. And you just have to play this crazy, wild game, for 18 to 20 hours a day. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff you don't see. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And it's just a fun whirlwind. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I'm glad I went on. I would change my gameplay up, but hindsight's 2020. So I'm happy with what happened. The winner won. And they were deserving, and it played out the way it did. I finished where I was supposed to finish based on my gameplay because I didn't play well enough to move forward, and I'm happy with that.
Brian, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man. I'm glad we got to connect on Instagram. I hope that we get to chat again in the future. Where can everybody find you online?
So Instagram, Worldwide Bry. You can find me on there. I'm on there all the time doing some fun, cool stuff. Twitter, you can find me on there talking about a few things, Mr. Worldwide Bry. I don't really do TikTok because I haven't figured out how to do a TikTok. I'm just like, I don't know how to do TikToks, but mainly Instagram is where you can find me. And I have a few fun things coming up soon, so stay tuned.
Awesome. Thank you again so much. Everybody, you guys can find us at 3 Geeks Podcast, at 3 Geeks J, and we'll see you guys real soon.